Hello folks, how's everybody doing out there? My name is Mark, this is Why I Hate the World, and tonight we are streaming again. So thank you all so much for joining, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about here, so let's jump right into it. So tonight I'm going to focus a lot on voter intimidation, voter suppression, and voter, all around shenanigans when it comes to voting. But before we jump into that, let's take a look at what we've got for our fantasy scene here. Let's see, let me just kind of move that down a little bit. It's coming along, I did a little bit of painting after I closed the last time. And yeah, I think it's looking pretty good here. I did a bunch of little details up in the bushes and here and stuff like that. And I think we're starting to hit that point pretty soon where we can fill in all the little details and then just start like messing around with light and shadow and etc. etc. So coming pretty good, I'd say. So let's keep it going. All right, so before we get into the main bulk of the subject matter for tonight, there is one thing that I want to talk about really briefly. I used to do a series of videos called Things I Don't Care About, right? Which is, things that didn't really require a full video. Hang on, let me crack a beer here. But, stuff that was like maybe hot in the news or whatever, or things that people asked me to comment on that I didn't have much of an opinion on, or, that didn't really take and require an entire video to talk about. And, it was easy content for sure. But it is something I miss doing. Right. And so before we move on, I do want to just talk, this little subject here would fall into a Things I Don't Care About video if I still did that. And that is Chris Pratt. So there is talk in leftist circles now about canceling Chris Pratt for some reason, right? The reason why I'm not really sure about. Because as far as I can tell, Chris Pratt has actually not done anything wrong. He's not said anything racist. He hasn't done anything overtly bigoted. Just seems to be that he's like a Republican, And like, for example, I guess there was some fundraiser that a lot of the cast members from the Avengers went to, and then he didn't go, right? Or something like that, And also he belongs to some kind of wacky church or something, apparently. And yeah, people are like, on the left are pissed at that for some reason, right? And really, honestly, I don't care. I don't care about Chris Pratt. I don't think he should be canceled just because of his political beliefs. Just because, has he done anything bad? Has he said anything racist to somebody? I mean, has he like done something transphobic or supported a hate group or something like that, then yeah, okay, fine. I guess, cancel him, right? And then when they say canceling, I mean, I don't even really like that idea in general. Well, okay, that's not true. I don't like that term, canceling, right? Because it makes it sound like, when you cancel somebody, right? It makes it sound like you're doing something more to them, like more egregious to them than you actually are. All you're really doing is boycotting them, but canceling for some reason makes it sound even worse, right? Like you have a moral obligation to do this versus boycotting somebody could just be because, they did something I don't like, when in real life that's what canceling is. Somebody does something you don't like, so you decide to not support them financially, right? And, not support them financially, not talk about them, and not, support the companies they work with, blah, 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 right? Well, yeah, so I don't think Chris Pratt has done anything that warrants that level of, public shame. Just being a Republican doesn't mean, I mean, has he actually done anything, right? Has he molested a child? Has he, you know, gone, do we have him on video saying something racist to somebody or whatever? Or, does he support like fucking, child molesters or some shit? I don't know. Do we have like video of him at like Jeffrey Epstein's fucking island or something? Like, do we have anything like that? Just not going to a fundraiser or voting for someone you don't like, or voting for someone you don't like, that's not good enough, in my opinion, because I don't think a lot of people understand that, a lot of the actors and directors and things like that are conservative and they vote Republican. A lot of them do. And, well, why? Because they're rich, right? And that's why, regardless of whatever he thinks of, that's the number one reason that somebody like Chris Pratt would vote Republican. It's because he's rich. He's rich, and so he's going to vote his interest. So if you want to get mad at somebody, get mad at, capitalism, right? I mean, and yeah, okay, all right, it's like, all right, he's a Trump supporter or whatever, fine. Does that mean that I'm not going to, like, go see Guardians 3 when it comes out? Hell no, I'm going to go see Guardians 3. Because he's an actor, he's a performer. And, like, I don't give a shit about what the guy's personal politics are. I give a shit, like, what has he actually done? You know what I mean? So, that's fine. So, no, I don't give a shit about that. I don't really care. I don't care if the church he belongs to, like, donates to, like, anti-abortion causes or whatever. Is he doing that? Is he going out making commercials for anti-abortion causes? That's different. Than just like the church he goes to, because anybody that goes to church, right? Every church you're supporting that kind of thing. Like, there is no church that is pro-abortion. Okay, even like the most liberal, Catholic, whatever. I mean, like not like a traditional Christian church. Maybe if you have some kind of New Age thing or whatever, you know what I mean. Then they might be pro-choice, but pretty much any evangelical, any Catholic church, anything like if you're a Mormon or some shit like that, they're all anti-abortion. So it's like, that's not good enough. You know what I mean? Like, what is he doing himself personally? So anyway, I don't give a shit about that. But that was something I just wanted to bring up real quick. Let's jump right into the meat of our discussion for tonight, which is voter suppression. So I have a nice big list here of all the shenanigans which are going on right now, because this sort of thing happens every single election. We have lots of people, engaging in very, shifty, not so legal activities when it comes to voting, right? And all the little tricks and rat fuckery, I guess, that comes along with it. And let's jump right into intimidation, right? Because the thing is that you hear about these stories, right? And then they kind of go away in the news, and then you never hear anything else about them. So I want to kind of highlight some of these things, so that people out there know it's an actual problem that we're still facing today, all right? Like, this isn't only stuff that happened back in the 60s or whatever, right? Voter suppression, vote tampering, voter intimidation. These are all problems that we face constantly, every election, even in this election right now. And, it's important for people to be informed about what's going on, and so that they can make rational decisions on who they want to support, right? So let's jump right into it. Okay, starting with voter intimidation, right? So what is voter intimidation? That's basically a threat of violence, a threat of, basically like economic threats, right? So voter intimidation could be something like, say, you run a business, you tell your workers that, if you don't vote a certain way, I'm going to lay people off. That's voter intimidation, right? You know, if you're in some kind of gang or something, you know, or if you're like a part of some, you know, militia or some shit, and you go out and stand next to the polls when people are voting and, like, you know, basically scare people off to keep them from voting, that's voter intimidation. You know, it's violence or the threat of violence designed to prevent people from exercising their right to vote. That's voter intimidation, right? So, the big story when it comes to voter intimidation are these emails that a bunch of people got, which were supposedly came from the Proud Boys, but in real life, the the FBI is telling us that they came from Iran for some reason. That's kind of bizarre. So, basically, people in a very heavily Democratic county in Florida, and not just Florida, but other states too, a couple of states, have reported that they received these threatening emails that supposedly came from the Proud Boys, right? That's the you know, that's the idea. Basically saying that, you know, we know who you are, we have your voter record, right? We know you're a registered Democrat. And if you don't vote for Donald Trump, we're going to come basically kill you, right? And each one of these emails would have the person's real name and address in it. Okay, so this was actually something that, you know, the FBI went on the news, and in order to, you know, kind of assure people, right, to let them know that this was bullshit. And they're saying that this was actually something that was instigated from Iran for some reason. And in what is probably a very, you know, semi-legal move, they said that it was designed to hurt Donald Trump somehow. So these emails were sent. Now let's just think about what we're being told. We're being told that these emails were sent by a foreign power that doesn't like Donald Trump, right? Iran. And that they were designed to hurt Donald Trump, but the actual substance of the emails are scaring people into voting for Donald Trump. The emails say, vote for Trump or we'll, you know, basically, they hint to, will basically, you know, come get you, right? I don't think they actually say we're going to kill you if you don't vote for Donald Trump, but they imply violence, right? Like, if you vote for Biden, then we'll know. That's what it says. Like, if you vote for Biden, then we'll know and we'll come get you, right? That's paraphrasing. That's what it says, basically. And so, you know, it kind of sounds like, I don't know, like, how exactly does that support Biden if the emails are saying if you vote for Biden, you will, you know, die? How does that make sense, right? Now, you could say, well, maybe the idea is that they're like counting on there being a backlash. Maybe that's the idea. Maybe the you know, the Iranian equivalent of the CIA or whoever it is that sent these out. If, you know, if our own intelligence people who are saying it's from Iran, if they're to be believed, which, you know, we don't have a reason in this instance not to believe them, right? If they're to be believed, then how does that follow? Like, that's what I'm guessing. I'm guessing they're saying, like, okay, they're betting that, okay, well, people will just be like, you know, fuck the Proud Boys, I'm gonna vote for who I want, and then we'll vote for Biden just to, like, stick it to him. Right? Is that how it works? I mean, maybe, you know? Me personally, it kind of sounds to me that this is not designed to actually get Biden voters. It sounds more like to me that this is designed to just basically fan the flames of hatred in the United States, right? Because, you know, the goals of our enemies, right? And I think, you know, even the most progressive among us would admit that Iran is an enemy of the United States, right? They would think that Iran would call itself an enemy of the United States. I mean, they live under the threat of invasion from us, basically, thanks to people like Donald Trump. You know, remember we had a peace deal with Iran that Donald Trump basically folded up and threw away, right? You know, the Iran fucking peace deal that he just like tossed in the trash. So they basically live under fear that one day our insane president might get a wild hair up his ass for some reason. You know, who knows? Maybe he's taken some kind of steroid or some shit to, like, you know, get rid of the Rona. And in the middle of a 15-hour tweet storm in the middle of the night might declare war on them or something. Like, that's a real fear if you live in Iran. So, yeah, it makes sense that they would want to support Biden. But you would think that if they were targeting somebody, if they were going to target, you know, people, they would target Trump supporters. Right? Because here's the thing. It sounds like bullshit, right? Anybody who reads that, you know, who's even in the slightest bit media savvy, would know right away that that email sounds like bullshit, okay? It sounds like something that a teenager would write, okay? But, you know, which makes, you know, and there's a lot of people now on the left talking about this who think that this is like a false flag thing, right? Because it's worded so ineptly, you know. But let's take it at face value, right? There will be some people who will vote for Donald Trump now because they're afraid of the Proud Boys coming to their house and killing them. There will be somebody, you know. We have no way of knowing how many people might fall for it, right? Because there's going to be someone that gets this email and doesn't watch the news and doesn't get the story that it was bullshit, right? There will be somebody. We don't know if it might be one person, it might be 100, it might be 1,000. We don't know. That's the idea. That's the idea behind these types of voter intimidation messages, right? Some percentage will, you know, fall for it. Somebody out there will fall for it. Someone's going to change their vote now because of that, right? And that's all it takes. And, you know, in an election where something like, I mean, what was it in Florida? Something like 500 votes in Florida separated Bush from Gore. And if they just would have kept counting the votes, you know, that's how many that Bush won by, was like 548 votes, something like that. You know, so every single one counts, especially when you go to battleground states like Florida, right? So, yeah, I mean, it seems counterproductive, right? So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not necessarily going to call bullshit on it because I'm not, you know, an intelligence agent, right? And I don't know if maybe that was the plan. Maybe the idea was to get a backlash of people to, like, you know, maybe that would be it. Maybe they were banking on the idea of people really hating right-wing assholes like the Proud Boys, and this would just get even more, you know, this would just result in even more Biden support. Who knows, right? But I don't know. It seems sketchy to me, right? I don't for an instant, though, believe that this email actually came from the Proud Boys, right? I mean, the thing is, the way it's written, you know, they're more sophisticated than that, right? These are guys who are like, you know, basically 4chan people. That's the Proud Boys. Those the kind of guys that go along with the Proud Boys. They're very sophisticated when it comes to things like, you know, LARPing, right? And if they wanted to craft an email to influence somebody, they would know how to do it. They wouldn't, like this, like I'm saying, this sounds like a fucking something that, you know, a 16-year-old wrote. Which maybe that, you know, is evidence. Maybe that's evidence that it was written by someone who's not a native English speaker. Right. So I don't know. I'm just saying I don't believe it for an instant. There's also the possibility that this is a false flag as well. That this was actually written by, you know, Republicans or Democrats or whatever for one reason or another. So we simply really don't know. They know that the email came from servers in Europe, you know, so maybe it was like being bounced around, so it couldn't be traced back. So we know at least that it did not originate in the United States. And it most likely did come from, you know, Iranian intelligence. It just doesn't seem like the most effective way to influence an election to me, right? But who knows, right? This is not the only example of intimidation that we have. It's probably the most public. There are in Philadelphia. This is a pretty crazy story. The Trump campaign in Philadelphia has been videotaping people as they go to deposit their ballots in drop boxes. Right? Why would you do that? What's the point of, you know, videotaping someone as they go vote, right? And being obvious about it, you know, because that's the problem. That's why something like this scares people, because they go to vote, they see people, like, doing sketchy stuff with cameras and shit like that, and they wonder, like, why are these guys taping it? What are they going to do with this information, right? Are they compiling it to something? And even if they don't do anything with it, the idea is that it's scaring people. That's the point behind this, right? Because, you know, the excuse for this apparently is that it's a poll watcher. These are poll watchers, right? Poll watchers who are videotaping people voting under the idea that they're trying to catch, you know, they're trying to catch voter fraud. You know, people voting twice, blah, blah, blah. The big boogeyman that Donald Trump has been harping on for the last 3 years. You know, voter fraud and all this other shit, and looking for illegal aliens voting and all the other ridiculous conservative conspiracy theories, etc., right? Well, you know, most people would not give a shit, right? But there's, like I said, the idea behind this is not to, like, prevent everybody from voting. It's to prevent just enough people from voting. It's to intimidate and scare just enough people to where it tips an election. So yeah, maybe not everyone is going to be, like, scared out of voting because there are cameras at the poll, but some people will, you know. Some people will, and that it might be enough, it might be just enough to actually tip it one way or the other, right? That's the point behind these things, you know. So apparently in this case, a judge has ruled that this goes outside of what's considered legal for, you know, and I'll put links to all of this stuff in the bottom, right? I've got links to all of it. Sometimes, you know, I might show some news, like, stories and stuff here, you know, but if I don't, it's because I've got a lot of them. So anyway, so a judge has said, yeah, this is no bueno. And to my knowledge, this has stopped, you know, this has actually stopped happening, right? But, you know, how many people felt uncomfortable about voting while it was going on and decided not to vote that day and just never got back around to it? You know what I mean? How many people, like, went down to their Dropbox, saw, like, these guys with their cameras and shit there, thought that maybe they're cops or something like that. Maybe they were, like, bad news and, like, you know, decided against it and just hadn't gone back since then. Said, fuck it, I'm just not going to vote. You know, surely, you know, probably somebody. Right. Let's see, what else we got? So also in Florida, a couple of armed guards set up a tent outside of an early voting location in St. Petersburg. And these guards claim to be with the Trump campaign. And that is illegal. You are not allowed, the campaign is not allowed to send security guards down to any voting stations, any voter drop boxes, anything like that, especially armed ones, right? To my knowledge, I think it's the law that the campaign cannot actually be inside of a polling place. They have to be a certain distance away, right? And actually sending people with guns to go watch a polling, that's ridiculous. That's fucking voter intimidation 101 right there. So the Trump campaign, of course, has denied this happening, right? And, you know, they deny it, but how do you know, right? They're just not lying. That's the thing. It's like, okay, we didn't send these guys. Well, somebody did. Somebody sent them. So it's like, you know, so were they sent by the Democrats, right, to keep people from voting? I mean, in a Democratic, like, area, why would the Democrats send people, armed guards, to intimidate voters in a district that's, like, leans heavily Democrat? Doesn't make fucking sense, you know? I mean, why would anybody send armed guards to a poll watching place anyway? What, are you afraid the fucking drop box is going to get attacked by ninjas or something? Why do you need people with guns there? It doesn't make any sense. So that's bullshit. And it's, you know, just another example of voter intimidation, and it's definitely turned off someone. Okay, we got some more. Now, there are people in Michigan where they found private security contractor in Michigan is advertising jobs for armed security jobs. And basically in these advertisements, they're saying that they're going to send guards to polling places on election day. Right? And, you know, and they're trying to reach, basically, they're specifically trying to recruit ex-military people and ex-police officers to go down, in these advertisements at least, to go down and, you know, patrol polling places on election day. That's fucking ridiculous. That's a joke. So I want to actually open that one up, because that doesn't seem like, you know, that sounds like something that, oh wait. Okay, there we go. Let me turn on my left monitor here. Just so you know, I'm not making that up. Alright. Calls for armed guards, army for Trump volunteers, vex Minnesota election officials. Okay. This is all shit that, like, these are all, you know, articles and things. I'm not just pulling this out of my ass. I'm not getting these from fucking Facebook posts or any, like, made-up bullshit like this. This is the Star Tribune. Right. Calls for armed military veterans combined with a volunteer army for Trump to descend on Minnesota for polling places have created fresh anxieties for state law enforcement and election officials already preparing for a major election in the COVID-19 pandemic. Cybersecurity and the coronavirus pandemic dominated preparations for vote this year. State and election officials are now closely monitoring new reports of one private security contractor advertising jobs that would illegally dispatch armed guards at Minnesota polling places, and another that planned to provide ex-military personnel for private companies in the event of post-election rioting. That is illegal. You're not allowed to send, you know, armed guards down to polling places. Okay. Adding to these concerns, the Trump campaign has vowed to raise a 50,000-plus army of volunteer observers across an array of battleground states to monitor the voting. That is also borderline illegal. They are allowed to do that. They have to stay a certain distance away from the polls, right? They're not allowed to bring, like, say, for example, you can't go to a poll wearing paraphernalia for any particular candidate. You can't like go to the polls wearing a Trump t-shirt or a MAGA hat or some shit like that. You have to take that off before you go in there. That's a law. You can't go and basically solicit people for voting at the place of voting. You know, you have to stand a certain distance away in order to do it, which is, you know, however many feet it is, right? But this is pretty much a law in every state in the country, right? And campaigns are allowed to send observers to the polls, right? And they can even do things like challenge votes, stuff like that, you know. Basically say like, hey, this guy, does he, you know, pull a dude aside, say, hey, is this guy registered here? Who is he? You know, does he match the fucking thing? Blah, 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 shit like that. And that's actually something, you know, that's something that the Trump campaign is vowing that they're going to do this time. And if you're going to vote in person, you should be prepared for that. You know, especially if you live in one of these battleground states, you should be ready for someone to fuck with you like that, you know. So bring your ID with you, even if your state doesn't have an ID mandate, because some states actually do, which should be illegal in my opinion, but, you know, whatever, right? Bring your ID with you, be prepared to, like, you know, prove who you are and that your vote, you know, you're voting legally, right? Because they can and will do this, and they can and will get your vote thrown out. And it sounds like bullshit. You know, it shouldn't be allowed, as far as, in my opinion, right? Let me turn this shit off. Shouldn't be allowed, in my opinion, you know, for like some random fucking dickhead at the polls to basically argue away your vote. That sounds like bullshit, right? But it's true. That can fucking happen. So be prepared. If you're going to vote in person, be prepared for that, right? Anyway, so apparently, according to this article, they say 3,000 people have signed up so far. And, you know, for this, right? And they're getting training. And in Minnesota, apparently, campaign workers are not allowed to interact directly with voters. So, yeah, like they can't like block off a polling site and then like talk to you and shit, you know, or set up a booth right outside the door or something like that. You know, they have to do it like a block away or something. So that's kind of freaky, you know. That sounds like bullshit. And if that's like not fucking voter intimidation, you know, then what is? Armed guards at a fucking polling place? That's fucking voting intimidation. Here's another one. Sorry, let's let this asshole on his motorcycle drive by first. Fucking douchebags. I should really try to like soundproof this room or something. I don't know. I should look into that. Here's one. Memphis, Tennessee. Poll worker was fired last week after interfering with early voters who wore t-shirts and masks with slogans supporting Black Lives Matter. So there you go. This shit is illegal, and this person shouldn't have just been, you know, fired for this. Let's turn on the monitor again. Voters in Georgia, Tennessee challenged at the polls for wearing Black Lives Matter shirts. This person shouldn't have just been fired for this. This person should be thrown in prison for this, right? Because, you know, you can't just prevent random people from voting because you don't like what they support. You know, that's the whole idea behind fucking democracy in the first place, you know. Okay, so anyway, long story short, I'm not going to read this whole thing, you know, but according to this, election worker said he would have to take his shirt off. He's wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt. He'd have to take his shirt off, you know, saying that it relayed activism. Okay, well, the law doesn't say that you can't, you know, have a shirt that relays activism. That's not the law. Okay, the law says you're not allowed to, like, solicit for a candidate. So if you went to the polls wearing a shirt that said protect the Second Amendment, that's not against the law. You know, if you went to the polls with a shirt that said, you know, save the whales, or, you know, I'm pro-life, or something like that, right? That's not against the law. So why is Black Lives Matter shirt? Why does that mean that you have to take off your fucking shirt? That's bullshit, right? And this person, fired. That's probably the only thing that's ever going to happen to this person too. This, as far, this person should be brought up on criminal charges for, you know, voter intimidation. Right. So anyway, blah blah blah. This is a pretty good article here. Basically says, tells the story of how people are trying to vote and they're being prevented. Blah 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 blah. Right. I'll put links to all of this stuff down in the bottom, so you can read all that. Okay, and then another one. Miami police officer has been accused of intimidating voters at an early polling place, where he was pictured in a uniform with a Trump 2020 face mask. Yep, another example, because you are not allowed to go to the polls with weapons, right, and just chill that, like, even just chilling at the polls, armed with your gun is enough. That's enough, right? And just, mad dogging people, can't do that, right? And funny enough, an on-duty police officer can be at the polls, right? An off-duty police officer cannot. In most places. I don't want to, say every place. I'm pretty sure that law is universal, though. Right? So, alright. Let's color in some of these rocks and stuff that are all around here. And for that, I'm going to use a marker, because I don't feel like mixing up any gray or black or whatever. So let's just color these in with a marker here. These are Coptic markers, which are very nice. All right. So yeah, man. Just to kind of show you guys, it's still happening, and it happens here, And these are just the ones that I have written down. See, that's the thing, right? For every time you see one of these in the news, you don't know how many stories have actually, not been reported. So we could just be getting, a small sliver of this, right? Okay, let's see. There's been lots of court cases. Pretty much all of them have to deal with Republicans who are trying to restrict the vote in some way. Let's see. Supreme Court case that has sided with Alabama. And what happened was that in Alabama, the state banned curbside voting. Right. So, basically what it was is that you could wait outside in your car, right? And because, of COVID-19, and people don't want to be too close to each other, and the Trump campaign decided, no, if you're going to go vote, you should have to put your life in danger, right? So this was a program in Alabama. The idea was to prevent people from putting themselves in danger of, being infected by the big C word. And the Republicans sued to get that overturned. And the Supreme Court sided with them because, you got to remember that even though there's a lot of news out there about the Supreme Court and how they're trying to get Amy Coney Barrett and to stack the court and all that shit, you got to remember the court is already stacked and is already conservative, right? And the Supreme Court will be conservative now for decades and decades and decades to come. So they don't really need Amy Coney Barrett now. They already have a conservative majority, right? Which is pretty fucked up. And this is just one example, So now if you live in Alabama and you want to go vote, and let's say you're disabled, let's say you're part of a high-risk group, something like that, and before you could just chill in your car till it was your turn, now you have to wait inside the building and put yourself at risk, right? Which makes you think, well, how many people are just not going to do it? How many people are just going to be like, well, fuck it. If it means I'm going to die, I'm not going to go vote. That, you need to remember, is the plan all along. That's the whole idea behind voter suppression, behind vote intimidation, is to just prevent people from going. Whether it's through the risk of, getting ill, whether it's through the idea that violence may be done to them, right? Something like that. That was the plan all along. So there you go. And you know what? Some people are definitely going to not vote because of that. Some other people will still vote and will most likely get sick. This decision will result in people dying. The thing is, we have no idea how many people will die because of this decision, but it will be greater than one. It will be some people, right? Which kind of just goes to show what Republicans really give a shit about. They don't really care about life. When you get, so I'm not talking about conservatives here. I'm talking about the Republicans, GOP, the GOP, specifically the Republican Party does not give a shit about life. They don't care about saving lives. They don't care about your life. They don't care about the quality of your life. And they don't care that this decision will result in people dying. They do not give a fuck. So keep that in mind when you go vote if you haven't already. I encourage everybody to vote by mail or to drop it off. I actually went and dropped mine off because I don't trust the post office with it. So I actually dropped it off myself. And California has a thing where you can get, text messages to tell you if it got counted. And mine's going to get counted. I don't know why that isn't everywhere in the country right now. It should be if it isn't. That just seems logical, doesn't it? It seems logical in this day and age when we have the technology that, we should be able to track your ballot and give people the confidence that their vote is actually being counted. I don't know. Okay, another court case. Let's see. Democrats and voting rights groups appealed a 7th Circuit panel's decision not to count late ballots postmarked by Election Day in Wisconsin, asking the Supreme Court to reverse the ruling. So, what is that all about? Well, there was a ruling that, they weren't going to count ballots that were postmarked on Election Day. So they had to be received by Election Day and not sent on Election Day, which is why. Why does that matter? We already know, this is going to be an election where people vote, right? And people have lives. They can't always get to the post office all the time because, the post office is only open from, baker's hours and shit, 9 to 5 or whatever. And people have jobs. They have work and shit. So it's why not allow them to send it on the last day if they have to? What's the big fucking deal? How is that so we have to wait 3 or 4 days for their vote to come in? Why is that a problem, right? It's only a problem to Republicans, right? Specifically Republicans. Remember, when I say Republicans, I mean the GOP. I mean Republicans. I don't mean conservatives, There's a difference between Republicans and conservatives in this context. Okay. Because conservatives conceivably believe in the rule of law and, democracy, right? At least they're fucking supposed to. Maybe in real life they don't, but they're supposed to, right? So conceivably, if you're a conservative, this shit should be pissing you off. You should be every vote should be counted. And why does it matter if it just takes a couple of days? It's okay, you have to set a cutoff date. Well, why not just set that cutoff date a few days later? Wouldn't you rather have an accurate count? An accurate count so that, the whole idea behind voting in the first place is so that the candidate gets a mandate, from the public. Well, wouldn't you rather have an accurate count that actually shows who the public really supports, right? I mean, you would think so if you actually believed in democracy, which conservatives are fucking supposed to believe in democracy. If you actually believed in that, you would think that would be something you support. But, at every fucking turn, these people seem to do the exact opposite of what would support a healthy democracy. You know, they seem to, the way they act is the complete 180 from what you would actually do if you wanted to have a healthy, robust democracy in this country, right? And these are just, this is all evidence. All this shit that I'm posting, that I'm talking about here, this is all evidence to that fact. That, you know, they don't give a shit about you. They don't care about your fucking voting rights. Right? So anyway, moving on. You know, and you'll notice the people that actually seem to do care about your voting rights here are the Democrats. And it's like, well, why do they care? Well, they care because the more people, it just seems to be in this country, when more people vote, Democrats win. That just seems to be how it works. Right? And it's like, you know, Republicans will admit this too. The GOP will admit this, right? When you have higher voter turnout, they lose. That's just the truth, you know? And instead of like trying to like figure out why that happens, you know, what is it that we support that makes us so unpopular, they would rather suppress the vote. And that's the goddamn truth. So that's why all of this shit is happening right now. Right? Because, you know, certain people don't actually want to listen to the mandate from the people. They would rather suppress those people, you know, for whatever reason, you know. I guess, I don't know. So they can get more money from their criminal friends or whatever on Wall Street, I guess, is the real reason, but that's speculation. Anyway, moving on. Trump campaign and Republicans in North Carolina asked the Supreme Court to block lower court rulings that allowed 6 extra days to accept ballots sent by mail. Thankfully, this seems to be something that is not going to happen. So, you know, North Carolina, they decided to extend that receivership date a little bit. You know, you got 6 extra days to go vote, you know, to get your mail ballots in, right? Which would make sense since, you know, Donald Trump and his friends screwed with the post office in these states, right? So they decided to extend it a little longer to see if they could make up for some of that. And then the Republicans tried to sue in order to stop that from happening, but it looks like that's not going to work. So score 1 for our side. Ha ha ha, too bad for you, Republican assholes. And just remember that, you know, if I lived in North Carolina and I read that story, like, I don't think I would ever vote ever for, you know, a Republican. Ever. Like, how could you support a political party that makes a move like that? You know, somebody there had to, like, okay that shit. You know, someone in the North Carolina GOP had to file that lawsuit. Had to say, okay, this is our plan, right? Why? Because they don't want people to vote. They don't want people to vote because that means they'll lose, and they know it. You know, so instead of actually doing what the law says, instead of playing fairly, right? Instead of allowing the people in the country to execute their fucking constitutional right, you know, to vote, even though it actually doesn't say in the Constitution that you have a right to vote. That could be a problem as well. We should talk about that too later. Right, not in this stream, but, you know. But even though, like, you know, conceivably you should have a right to vote, you're supposed to have a right to vote, and instead of actually helping people do that, they do everything they can to fucking stop it. You know, how can you support those people? I would never vote, you know, ever again in North Carolina if I lived there, just from that shit. Like, I don't understand how, and, you know, so how do they keep winning elections there? Like, there's got to be people that actually support that. There's got to be people that actually read this story, see that, oh, hey, they're trying to stop people from voting, and like it. They like it. And that's, you know, that's something that we got to remember, right? We have to remember that because, you see this a lot when it comes to debates. I'm just going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, and then we'll get back to the voter suppression shit. You see that a lot when it comes to debates, from the right and the left, right? And even all the way up into, debates for senators and even president, right? We have to remember that these people are not honest actors, right? They don't care about, like Mitch McConnell, for example, knows exactly what he's doing, so, or Lindsey Graham, for example, like, so when they did something like hold up the confirmation for Merrick Garland, for example, over a year, and then now they turn right around and are trying to ram through Amy Coney Barrett, and Lindsey Graham gives this bullshit excuse. He goes a year ago and says, "Oh, they can use my word against me." I actually played that video in my live stream when he said this, right? Yeah, you can use my words against me. This is going to be the new procedure. This is the new normal. And then the nanosecond, that it actually happens, he flip-flops 180% and turns around and says, no, we're going to support a new Amy Coney Barrett, right? You got to remember that, it was never his intention in the first place to actually follow through with that, right? And that's what we, always remember that. Whenever you see a debate, whenever you see a politician, especially a Republican conservative politician, talk, they're not being truthful. They're not, they're not honest actors, right? And so you'll hear a guy say some shit like, oh, well, it's wrong, voting suppression is wrong, blah, 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 blah. And that's why we want to send armed guards to polling places to make sure that there's no cheating. Bullshit. He's lying. Because this is what you'll hear. If you try to debate these things with people, they're going to give you these horseshit lines. Oh yeah, all of these, the 50,000 strong vote watcher army is there to prevent cheating. It's there to prevent illegal aliens from voting or some horseshit like that. That's bullshit. They're lying. They're lying straight to your face. And keep that in mind, right? Keep that in mind when you 2 weeks from now, right, on election day, when all of the shit's going down, when there's 50,000, voter observers and shit from the Republican Party trying to stop people from voting, when they're sending armed guards to the polls to intimidate people, when the Proud Boys are out there with fucking weapons beating people up in line, guaranteed you that's going to happen. Someplace around this country, those assholes are going to show up with guns, try to start a riot or some shit, right? Guarantee you. I'll eat my fucking, I'll eat my hat if we don't have at least one instance of that happening this election. Right? And, remember that the excuses they give you are just excuses. They're not honest actors. Okay? They're lying about the reasons that they're there. Right? I think I'm actually going to live stream on election night. Just so that we can, talk about this shit. And win or lose, because I'm making a point to not be emotionally invested in this election, because even though the polls look, like Biden should God stomp, he could lose. He could still lose. Let's keep that in mind, right? So if he loses, I'll be disappointed, but I'm not going to be devastated. I'll just be like, well, shit. What could we have done to do better? Right? I mean, to be honest, I'll be very fucking surprised if he loses at this point. I mean, what is he fucking... He's almost 10 points ahead still. That's been pretty steady. I think it went down to 7 points for a little while, and now it's back up to 10. So, yeah. And I think, actually, if Biden loses, that's evidence of cheating. That's evidence that these sorts of voter intimidation shenanigans and stuff have done their job, right? And prevented people from voting. So, man, this is gonna be a crazy 2 weeks, folks. All right, how much time we got? Shit, it's been an hour already. Jesus Christ. Time really flies when you actually have shit to talk about, and then you stick to it. Okay. Let's see. Blah 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 blah. Let's continue here. A Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals panel has upheld Michigan's ban on transporting voters to the polls, overturning a Detroit federal district judge. So, yep. So there's a ban. So basically, and I know that other states you can do this, but I guess apparently in Michigan you can't. But I know in other states it's legal for, say, if you have no way of getting to the polls, right? Like, say your polling place is 10 miles away or some shit, because in whatever state you live in, they've shut down all the polling places, right, in order to prevent you from voting, and you need a ride to it. In elections passed in other states, it's legal for somebody from, say, your local Republican or Democratic, party to organize a ride share, come pick you up and go help you vote. That was, I know, like in California, that used to be legal, right, in California, And apparently in Michigan, for some reason, that's not legal. And it looks like they tried to get that legalized, and nope, that's been banned. Why would you ban that? See, that doesn't make sense to me at all, right? Because, I mean, the idea, once again, is conceivably you want people to vote, right? That's what everybody says. They all say they want people to vote. Why would you not want people to vote, right? Doesn't make sense to me to not want people to vote, Seems like you would want to help people, right? So what's wrong with, organizing a ride share to go help people who can't get out to vote, How does that, influence somebody's vote? They're part of a political party. They're already going to vote a certain way, right? Why is it illegal to just give them a ride to the polls? Doesn't make any sense, does it? So, but apparently, the Republicans think that's such a big threat to the integrity of the vote that they went to court in order to stop that. Doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But here's the other thing about that. The Democratic Party could just turn right around and be like, okay, we won't pick you up, but hey, here's a guy who will pick you up for free. He's not affiliated with us at all. Bam. Circumvent that. See, that's 100% legal as well. They could just be like, all right, here's a free ride service that will pick you up. All you got to do is sign up with them and they'll go get you. And they could get around that. But it just can't actually be part of the official Democratic, function that they pay for or some shit like that. And it's just bullshit. It's just bullshit. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make sense to me. But whatever. Let's move on. Okay. What was this all about? Okay, in Ohio. So a few weeks back, I reported. Well, I didn't report, but I commented on a story. I'm not a reporter. I'm a commenter. Commented on a story where the governor of Texas tried to limit the number of drop boxes to 1 per county in Texas, right? Which, to my knowledge, that has been reversed. Because some of those counties in Texas are gigantic. Thousands of square miles, and some of them have millions of people, right? And apparently the same thing happened in Ohio, and it looks like that's going to be the thing in Ohio. So in Ohio, they've limited the number of drop boxes, right? One ballot box for each county. So the same shit is happening in Ohio, and there's been this legal battle over it, and it looks like the Democrats lost in Ohio. So thanks to the Ohio GOP, if you live in Ohio and you happen to live in a very large, county that's really huge, there will only be one drop box in the entire county. And you may have to drive dozens or even hundreds of miles to go drop off your vote. I mean, Ohio is not as big as Texas. For those of you guys who don't know, Texas is, massively gigantic. Like, if you live in another country or some shit and you're watching this, Texas is huge. Texas, you can drive for 3 days straight and not get through Texas. It's massive. Ohio is not as big as Texas, obviously, but, that's still not an excuse. You still shouldn't have one drop box per county. This is per county, right? Let's put that in perspective. Los Angeles County in California is massive. Massive. And if there was one drop box, you could easily end up driving 50 miles to go vote. And that's just, if that's not vote suppression, what is, right? And by contrast, I happen to live in Los Angeles County in California. And just in my town, my little town here, right? I actually live a little north of Los Angeles. Just in my town, there were like 6 drop boxes that I could go to, because they mail a list of them. It was like I could go to the city hall, I could go to the library, I could go to the fucking police station, I could go to the fire station. Like, there were like drop boxes everywhere, right? And so I can't even, if I had to drive to, like, say, City Hall in Los Angeles to drop off, that's like 45 miles away, right, from where I live, but I'm still in the same county. That's what people in Ohio are going to have to do now. So now, if you lived there, let's say that you had, you intended to go vote early in a drop box thing, but now you have to drive 45 miles. Are you going to go do it? Probably not. You're probably not going to do it. I probably wouldn't either. You're probably going to wait to vote in person. And then, so what are they going to do next? They're going to limit the number of fucking polling stations in democratically held counties. That's what they're going to do. Right? Guarantee it. We already saw that we saw that earlier this year. People were voting in North Dakota during the pandemic, and there were lines, and people were waiting in line for 6, 7, 8 hours at a time just to vote. It's a joke. It's absolutely, and that's another way of suppressing the vote. That's another vote suppression tactic, right? Because people are not going to do it. If you have to wait 8 hours to vote, people aren't going to do it. They have shit to do. Are you going to stand in fucking line for 8 hours to vote? Probably not. And they count on that shit. So this is all like, and you'll notice in every single one of these court cases, the people trying to stop people from voting, they're all Republicans. Why is that? Why do Republicans not want people? If you're a Republican, if you're a conservative and you vote Republican and you want to cut taxes and you want to defend, the unborn babies and you want to support the Second Amendment, whatever reason it is that you vote Republican, right? Think to yourself, why are they doing that? Why are they going to court to make it harder and harder for people to vote? And can you really support that? Shouldn't we all have a choice? Shouldn't you have a choice whether or not you're going to support candidate A or candidate B or vote for this law or that law? And isn't it, how is it not better if you live in a democracy? How is it not better to actually have more people cast their vote? Right? How? I mean, the only reason is because they don't actually believe in democracy, because they don't actually want people to decide, right? Because they want to decide for you, right? That's the real reason why you would support, why you would suppress votes like this. That's really the only reason. The only reason is you don't want people to vote because you want to just impose your will on everyone else and fuck them if they don't like it. And that just seems to be the pattern that the GOP follows. All right? That seems to be it. They don't care. And, if that's what you support, then, stop watching my video. Seriously, if that's how you believe, if that's what you believe in, if you believe in the idea that you should be allowed to impose your will on everyone else, then get the fuck off of my channel. Get off, don't comment, unsub from me. I don't want your views, if that's what you believe. Alright? Kiss my ass. I'll say it right now. I don't care who you are, I don't care what you believe. If you don't believe in democracy, if you think that it is, for whatever, I don't give a fuck what the reason is. I don't care if you're trying to, if whatever twisted reason you have, you think you're actually doing the right thing. I don't give a shit. Okay? But if you think that you have the right to basically mandate how other people should live without their input, without their say-so, without their ability to organize, petition the government, and have a say in how their society is run, then you can kiss my ass and kindly go fuck yourself. Right? And I don't give a fuck who you are. I don't give a fuck if you're the most moral person on earth. For whatever reason you have, suck my dick. That's my response to you. So, moving on. Anyway, voter suppression. There's only got a couple of them when it comes to voter suppression. Okay. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' administration delivered last-minute guidance to local election officials, urging them to remove from the voter rolls people with felony convictions who still owe court fines and fees. Yeah, we heard about that. So there was a law. Need to get some water. Sorry, because I ran out of. I'm drinking Mike's harder strawberry here, which is pretty good. But I just ran out of it, and now it made me all thirsty. So yeah, there was a law in Florida that got passed that allowed people who have criminal records, who were convicted of felonies and things like that, to repatriate, re-enfranchise them. Not patriate, that's the wrong word. Re-enfranchise them and allow them to vote again. And the Republicans stepped in and basically said, okay, you can do that if you pay off all your court fees and all your court fines, which is essentially putting a poll tax. Now, if you don't remember your 8th grade history, poll taxes were a method by which, in the good old days of the 18th century, you would keep black people from voting through a poll tax, saying, okay, you can vote, but you got to pay this tax of $10, $15, $20 or whatever, which of course back then was like $1,000, right? And people couldn't afford it. And that sort of thing persisted all the way up until the 50s and 60s. And one by one, all of these laws were overturned, And the early civil rights movement had a lot to do with that, of overturning these types of Jim Crow laws, right? Well, this is just another form of Jim Crow, essentially, although this is a law that affects white people too. See, if you go to prison, I can understand why they won't allow people who are in prison to vote, although I think that's bullshit too, because nowhere in the Constitution does it say that you can't vote if you're in prison. It doesn't say that. anywhere, right? But, you know, I can understand, okay, well, if you're in prison, you're also removed from society, right? So I can understand that at least. I don't agree with it, but I understand it, right? But what I don't understand is why, when you get out of prison, you know, you don't get your right to vote back. That doesn't make any sense to me. So that seems to me to be a cruel and unusual punishment, because you're essentially being punished for the rest of your life for a crime that you already paid your debt to society for, you know. And, you know, felonies are not always violent crimes. You know, you could say some shit like, you'd be like, oh yeah, well, I don't want some fucking rapist or murderer getting the right to vote. Yeah, well, not all felonies are violent, you know. Grand Theft Auto is a felony, right? Stealing a car. So what, you steal a car and you never get to vote again ever in your whole life? You know? What if you steal a car and you go to prison for 5 years? Okay, you've paid your debt to society. You've been isolated from society, right? You've gotten out of prison. You're ready to start your life over, to get a job, do your thing, blah, 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 but you can't vote. And that's just a little, you know, it's a punishment. It's a punishment that, in my opinion, should go away when you get out of prison. I don't understand how that's even allowed, right? And, you know, a lot of states have that still in fact. There are some states like Tennessee where you never get it back, you know. In California, you get it back after a certain amount of time. I think there actually are a lot of states where when you get out of prison, you get a right to vote back, like, immediately. You know, I know in California it's not immediate. It's like you get, you know, depending on what the crime is, and then after a certain amount of time, you get it back, right? But yeah, I know, like, Tennessee, for example, you never get your right to vote back. Ever. Which doesn't seem right to me, you know. And this, Florida, was like an attempt to remedy that, you know. This was an attempt to, like, fix that, you know, because you're seeing more and more people going to prison, especially, like, people of color, right? For, you know, one reason or another. I mean, that's what Black Lives Matter is all about, you know. Communities of... Oh, for fuck's sake. Seriously, buddy? Turn off your fucking alarm. Anyway, communities of color being unfairly targeted by police, blah, 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 right? So it's like, why is that even, like, allowed, you know? I don't get that shit. So anyway, and, you know, getting back to the subject at hand, why would the Republican Party not want to allow these people to vote? What are they afraid of? Are they afraid that they're going to vote Democrat? You know? Because why? What? Because all criminals are Democrats? Is that what they're trying to say? No. The real reason is because a disproportionate number of people who are in prison are black, and they know that. And black people tend to vote Democrat. That's why. That's the only reason why. Okay, that's why they fucking don't want people who have criminal, you know, who were convicted of felons to not have the right to vote, because it removes people who would vote Democrat. That's exactly why. It's bullshit. It's just another, you know, another way that they can fucking cheat and steal the votes from people. Absolute bullshit. Okay, one more. North Dakota has 58% fewer in-person voting stations this year than it did in the last presidential election. So apparently, in 2016 in North Dakota, there were 259 polling stations. This year, there are 109. And apparently, there's some Native American reservations in North Dakota where they have been hit the hardest. So for these reservations, they're the Mandan, Hidasta, and Arikara Nation. They have only 3 polling places. Right? For their all 3 of their reservations only have 3 polling places. which is, you know, and these are like essentially towns, you know, that are, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. And you got to remember, like in my town alone, my town is not that big. And it's like, there's like 20 polling places where I live every year. It's ridiculous. You know, why would you do this? How could you support this? You know? And I guess that's my question, because I'm pretty much done with all of my list here. That's my question, right? If you're a conservative, how can you support anybody who believes this shit? How can you support anyone that supports this? You know, this would turn me off. Like if I were a conservative and I saw the party that I vote for engaging in this kind of behavior, this would be a major red flag to me, right? It doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, you know, the voting is the fundamental building block of our society, right? That's what the United States is basically based on. The idea that, you know, you have a say, no matter how small that say is, in what's actually, you know, the policies of this nation, right? Because a lot of places out there you don't have a say, you know. Traditionally, in the entire history of mankind, most people have not really had much influence on who leads them or what those leaders did. Not really. All throughout history, you know, you never really got to decide who was the king or who was the lord, who owned the land you live on, you know. Not really, right? Even in democracies in the past, you know, they talk about ancient Greece and shit like that. Only a very small class actually had the power to vote in ancient Greece, right? Basically, the wealthy landowners, and that's kind of how it started in this country too. But it's not like that now. You know, regardless of whatever our origins were and how imperfect our democracy was in the beginning, it's not like that now. Everybody has a right, you know, the ability to vote and influence the direction that this country goes. You know, you don't have direct control, obviously, and really no person should have direct control as far as I'm concerned. One person should not have control over what happens, you know, to everybody in this country. Although there are people that, you know, have way too much power, right? People like Mitch McConnell, for example, have way too much power in what happens in this country. But still, somebody voted for Mitch McConnell, you know, and it's just like, I mean, however imperfect you think it is, because it's not perfect. Our system that we have is far, far from perfect. All right. And it can be improved in 100, 1,000 ways even. But that doesn't mean that we should abandon it and throw it out the fucking window. Right? And that doesn't mean that, you know, we shouldn't try to expand it as much as possible and to enfranchise and get people involved as much as we can, you know. Conceivably, it should be more fair if more people voted. If more people were involved in the political process from the ground up, right? And were involved in getting, you know, the candidates they like elected and involved in, you know, creating the party platform, right? And all of that stuff, you know, and getting people out to vote and petitioning to get laws passed and you know, referendums and all of the shit that, you know, they teach you in civics class when you fucking slept through it. If more people were involved in all of that stuff, then that would just mean we would live in a society that was that much more representational and ultimately fair, right? Because that's the whole point behind voting in the first place. The whole point behind voting in the first place is to give people equity in their society, you're more likely to pay your taxes and obey the law and, you know, be a functioning member of society and such like that, when you feel like you have something invested in society, right? Even when you don't. That's the whole point behind voting. That's the whole point behind, that's why they call it enfranchising people. When you're, you know, you're enfranchised when you vote, right? You have a piece of the pie, you know. Even if you personally think you don't, because there are, and I will say this too, a lot of people on both sides of the aisle, especially on the left, who do not believe in electoral politics at all, right? And that's fine. You don't have to fucking believe in it. You don't have to participate. That's the beauty of our system. The beauty of our system is you don't have to participate in the system, right? You have a choice to not. And if you object because you think it's all sham, that's perfectly fucking fine with me. No one's putting a gun to your head saying that you have to vote, right? But keep in mind, if you don't, then you are basically throwing away the most direct influence that you may have on what happens in our system. Keep that in mind, you know. You don't have to be politically active. But if you are, the more politically active you are, the greater your influence is, right? And whether that's just you phone banking for a candidate or being a donor, you know, going out and donating money or organizing stuff, or, you know, even if you're like someone who's more important right, later on, and you end up being one of the people behind the scenes who makes important decisions, shit like that, you know, the more you participate, the higher your influence actually is, right? You want a certain law to get passed, you know, you go out, you get signatures for that law, you get it on the ballot, right? And, you know, that law gets passed, or it doesn't pass, right? But whatever, right? It's not going to happen if you don't put in the effort. That's something that people don't understand. See, people want stuff. They want things in this country. They want there to be, you know, a universal health care. They want to end wars. They want to have environmental, you know, regulations and things in order to prevent us from fucking, like, you know, going into a dystopian hellhole in the next 10 years, even though that's kind of too late and it's already going to happen, but that's a subject for another video, right? They want these things. The most effective way to get some of these things is to actually pass a law, right, in order to get some of this shit to happen. And they don't understand that it requires work. Because, you know, and it just so happens the way our government is set up is that the more money you have, the greater influence you have, right? That's just how it is. And that's pretty much how it's going to be in every government out there, regardless of, you know, the type of government it is. The more money you've got, you know, if your society uses money, right? If it uses wealth and money, and you have it, you're going to have more influence than the guy who doesn't have it. That's just how it is, you know. A politician is going to listen to someone who gives them a $10,000 check more than a guy who shows up and says, I have concern that, you know, this particular sea turtle is going extinct. Right? They're going to listen to the guy with the check. That's just the God honest truth. Well, how do you counter that? Money in politics. How do you counter that? Right? You counter it with numbers. You know, if you don't have the money in order to, you know, influence them that way, then the way you get influence is you say, hey, I have a voter block in this area that if you don't fucking listen to what we say, We're going to primary your ass. Right? And then guess what? They'll start listening to you, because you have power now. And that's, is that ideal? No. Should it be like that? No. Conceivably, everybody's voice should be equal, right? Yeah, well, what's that thing that they say in Wayne's World? Monkeys might fly out of my butt or whatever, right? Kind of shows you how old I am. I don't know if you've ever seen Wayne's World. I just dated myself immensely with a Wayne's World reference, right? But I'm just trying to keep it real here for you folks, right? It's not perfect. It's not perfect, but it's what we got, right? Of course, work towards making it perfect. Work towards improving things. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't work to improve stuff, right? Actually, I don't want blue. I want purple. Hang on. Do what you can to improve things to what you believe is a more equitable society, right? But at the same time, that doesn't mean you should ignore the system and with the system we have here and now, because this is the system that will affect real people in their daily lives, right? And there are things you can do, even as someone who doesn't have a lot of money and power, to influence that system. One of those things is voting. You can be politically active, right? You can volunteer your time, you can volunteer your money, right? Or you can go vote, and that's the thing is, voting is the least you can do as far as I'm concerned, right? Voting is the most minimum amount of civic engagement that you can do in order to, influence something, right? See, by the time it gets to the voting part, by the time it gets to voting, all of the big decisions have already been made, right? All of the work's already been done. The people who actually put in the work to get their candidate on the ballot, to get their measure before you, not sure how it is in other states, but in California, every election we have these state measures, which are basically just laws and things that, people, and it's kind of awesome, I think, that, in California, if you want to pass a certain law and you can't get a politician to back it, you can go the state measure route, although there are certain laws that even if the legislature passes it, it still has to go to a ballot measure, right? Which seems kind of redundant to me. It seems like if that goes through the state Congress House, then it should be a law. Like, I don't see why the people have to vote on it again, but whatever. That red is way too dark. That's supposed to be an apple. I'll have to lighten that up a little bit. Anyway, but yeah, that's kind of awesome too. So you can just, you have to get someone to sponsor it or something like that, and then you have to get a certain number of signatures, and then it can become a law, That's how marijuana legalization happened in California. No particular politician would back that shit, so it actually went to the people to decide, and then the people decided they wanted to legalize weed, and it's like, well, there you go. Right? That wouldn't have happened if we didn't get people who are active to actually make it happen. You know what I'm saying? People worked for that. Somebody went out and got signatures and signed people up to vote and, worked hard to get that on the ballot in front of people. And then lo and behold, the people voted for it, and now it's the law. And right now in my fridge, I have so much marijuana. You don't even know. I have a lot. I don't even really smoke marijuana anymore. I'm old now. I can't handle it. But I just have it because it's fucking, because I have the ability to have it now. And, you know, I think we made brownies out of some of it. You know, we made, or no, my wife made little, you know, little cupcakes. Right? And it's great. It's fucking great. And, you know, that wouldn't have happened without political activism. So this is why, you know, and you get plenty of activism on the left, especially when it comes to marches and when it comes to, like, you know, shit like that. Marches and protests and blah, 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 that kind of thing. You know, but when it comes time to actually vote, they seem to disappear. And, shit. Is that like, yep. That dried up. Damn it. I had my Citadel Cadian flesh tone and that dried up. So I can't use that anymore. That sucks. Anyway. You know. And I think that's a real problem. That's a real problem on the left. That this sort of lack of enthusiasm when it comes to electoral politics, I think is something that's really holding leftist movements back a lot. You know, they're very, very happy to go protest and you know, fight the man and all that shit in the streets, right? Not so responsive when it comes time to fight at the ballot box, and that's a serious thing that, you know, I think is really holding people back, especially in leftist, you know, circles. It's really holding people back because, you know, if a law shows up that gets something of what you want, even if the law that you're voting for isn't 100%, right? Because it'll never, you know, you should still go out there and support it. Like, here's the thing, it'll never be everything that you want, right? Because I hear this every year, every year as well, especially from, like, Bernie supporters and shit. You know, well, not just Bernie supporters, but from people from that side of the aisle. I hear this kind of thing a lot. Oh, well, this law doesn't go far enough, so I'm not going to support it. Well, why? You know, it'll never go far enough. That's the thing. You'll never get 100% of what you want. You know, but you should support the things that you want. Does it, you know, for example, does it give, like if there's a law that says, okay, well, we're going to give homeless people, you know, X amount of dollars in support or something like that. And they go, well, no, that's not enough. It's got to be, or here's another one, raising the minimum wage. Here's the thing that you hear a lot. They're going to raise the minimum wage to this much money. And then, you know, I'll hear like, well, no, it's got to be, you know, $15 an hour, right? And like this law, like there'll be a law that says, okay, we're going to raise it to 13. Well, no, that's not enough. It has to be 15. Well, there isn't a law that right now on the ballot to raise it to 15, right? In the meantime, the people that are making fucking $7.50 right now could really use that extra, you know, $5, $6 an hour, right? Is that what it is? 7 minus, yeah, $6 an hour. I can do math, right? They could really use that. So while you're sitting here debating, waiting for your perfect fucking law to show up, these guys aren't able to pay their rent. You know, it's like, no, man. You know, support the shit that gives you, you know, that moves in the general direction of what you want. Support that stuff, right? And sometimes it'll genuinely be a shitty law. And it's like, well, if you guys don't go out there and vote against a shitty law, then the same thing's going to happen. You know, if you don't stop crappy laws from passing that damage things, then they're going to become fucking laws, and then it'll just be, whose fault is that? You know, it's your fault because you didn't fucking do anything about it. So, anyway, I don't know. Let's see. Where are we at here? 134. Wow. Okay. So there was one other thing I wanted to show here. This came up right before my stream, there was a story about this. Okay, let me just kind of... Can I make that bigger? Oh, of course. No, I have to save it first. Hang on, let me save this. Save as Trump PNG. Save it. All right, let me just go to my thing. So, right before I... let's see, let me go to my pictures. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And, of course, it's not here. God damn it. Sorry, folks. I saved a picture. This PC that I'm using in the back of... I'm in my back room here. This is actually like my wife's computer, so there it is. Okay. So, right before I started the stream here, I saw this story on YouTube, and it was about a letter that some people in... Oh, where was this? This was in New Hampshire, Milford, New Hampshire. Let me show you this letter. Okay. So this was a letter that a couple of homeowners in Milford, New Hampshire got. That is basically the same kind of thing. You know, this is voter intimidation. And it kind of sounds like that letter that supposedly came from the Proud Boys, but really came from Iran. I don't know if you know, I talked about that at the beginning of the stream. And this, let me, if you can't read that, I'll read it to you guys. Dear neighbor, you have been identified by our group as being a Trump supporter. Your address has been added into our database as a target for when we attack, should Trump not concede the election. We recommend that you check your home insurance policy and make that it is current, and that it has adequate coverage for fire damage. You have been given fair warning. Always remember that this was you, in quotes, that started this civil war. Be prepared to face the severe, bold consequences of your preemptive actions against democracy. Yeah, okay, so, actually, let's go back to that. So I literally just saw this like 5 minutes before I started the stream. It was on the Young Turks, I think, right? Kind of sounds a little similar to the letter that supposedly came from Iran, that was like trying to pretend to be from the Proud Boys, doesn't it? Seems like just like the same wording almost, Now, this is voter intimidation, right? If it's legit, it's pretty fucked up. The Young Turks didn't think that it was legit because it kind of sounds like bullshit, right? These, and one thing that I kind of agree with this here, this is in Milford, Minnesota, by the way. Okay. This line down here where it says, remember, it was you that started this civil war. That's basically a right-wing line there, Nobody on the left is entertaining the idea that we're in a civil war. That's not something that we say. People don't talk about civil wars and shit in leftists, or not really. That's something that you get from right-wing. So, they were under the impression that this was a false flag thing. And also the fact that only 2 people have reported getting this letter, which makes me agree with them a little bit. It kind of sounds like bullshit, but you never know. And we should take it at face value. We should believe that there is, someone out there who wrote this in a malicious manner, right? Although it is most likely 99% bullshit. But, it still should be investigated, this letter, and the people that wrote it should still be held to the law, and go to prison, even, if they have to, right? Because this kind of thing should not be allowed. So I guess I wanted to show that off just to kind of show everybody that it's not just Republicans, because every one of those instances that I listed throughout the entire first half of this stream, all of them were Republicans. It was all of them were the GOP, right? Basically, the GOP, you know, engaging in voter suppression. Every single one. And I guess this just kind of shows you it's like, well, it's not always them, right? Even though that particular letter, most likely 99% was the GOP. That, you know, I mean, not the GOP, but that most likely was a conservative Republican person who wrote that as a way to, like, you know, get the narrative back or whatnot. You know, but we have no proof of that actually being the case. So who really knows? I mean, it just sounds like bullshit. And I think probably with that instance, we'll never find out. We'll never know who actually sent that letter or whatnot. You know, it just kind of sounds like crap to me. So whatever. But, you know, it could happen. I guess that was the idea. You know, the idea is what I'm trying to say here is that it could happen. It could very well, you know, there could be instances of voter intimidation coming from the left to the right. And, you know, we should not tolerate that either. Right? I'm just not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. And I don't think, you know, so far we actually haven't really seen very many instances of that. And I don't think we really have much to worry about as far as that goes. I need to find a pencil sharpener, so give me 1 second, folks. Somewhere around here I've got a pencil sharpener, and I gotta pull that out. I'm feeling a little, shit. Hope I'm not fucking sick. I feel a little lightheaded, you know. God, that'd be horrible. If I had the Rona, that would be bad. I actually haven't really gone outside very much, or gone out to eat or anything. I did, believe it or not, I did go out to eat on the 10th because it was my anniversary, and I went to a sushi place for the first time in, like, this entire year. Like, me and my wife went out to eat it. We got, like, ramen and sushi. And I realized that that was the first time I've actually been out at a restaurant for this entire year, you know. And it was like, I suddenly realized, like, how much I miss going to restaurants. Like, I had a blast, you know. It was great. And then I realized, like, you know, because I was, like, eating and stuff, I'm like, oh, man, I really miss this, right? And then I saw the waitress show up, and she's, like, wearing a full mask and, like, a face shield, right? And all of this shit, and I'm just like, oh, wow, it's not over with, you know. And I started getting all paranoid, and then, like, some people sat down at a table that was, you know, 6 feet away from us, but still was a little paranoid about it, and just like, fuck, you know. It was fun to actually go outside and, like, be outside with real people and stuff, but at the same time, it's like, you gotta remember, like, you know, this shit's not over with. So, anyway, 143, let's see, do we got any comments? Probably not. Oh, there's a couple of comments. Before I get to, I do want to talk about, I will talk about your comments there. Dynacat loves me. How you doing? Nice to talk to you. But I want to talk about one more thing before we get to the comments. And the thing I want to talk about is why I don't watch debates. I don't watch them. And the reason why I don't watch debates is because I don't believe that debates actually do anything to influence people, right? So why do you have debates? Well, the idea behind, you know, like we just had the third, well, which would have been the third presidential debate, but really was the second because Donald Trump is an overgrown man baby and wouldn't, like, do the second debate in a remote way because he was still fucking contagious and he didn't want to do the debate, you know. And this second debate actually, they basically said, we're going to cut your mic if you don't shut up. And I didn't watch it. I just watched highlights. But from what I understand, they actually did have to do that to Donald Trump. They actually did have to cut his mic once because he tried to talk over Joe Biden. From what I understand, I could be wrong there. But anyway, the reason why I don't watch debates is because no one who watches debates actually wants to get their mind changed, right? There's a very small number of people who go into debates not knowing who they're going to vote for. And to be honest, at this point, if you don't know who you're going to vote for, then you probably shouldn't vote. Okay, seriously, this election specifically is the most polarized fucking election right now, right? Because we have, you know, an extremely polarizing figure. You know, let's not mince words. We have an extremely polarizing figure as the president. And if your ass hasn't been paying attention in the last 4 years, then you probably, you know, don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And if at this point you still don't know, you know, who you're going to vote for, like, seriously, like, what the fuck have you been doing? Right? What have you, I mean, do you just not pay attention to anything? Like, I don't understand. But anyway, far be it from me to tell people not to vote. You know, obviously go fucking vote. I'm just wondering, like, you know, how do you even breathe is what I'm wondering, but whatever, right? You know, but debates really are not about, you know, they're not about ideas. That's the thing, okay? They're not really there so that you can try to convince people to go to your side or convince people to see a particular subject by your point of view, right? What you're really doing at a debate is trying to convince people, you know, what's more effective at a debate is how you look and not what you say, right? So it's not about, you know, how effectively you argue a certain point or, you know, how well you know your policy, this or that, or what you know the facts about, blah, 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 blah. It's how good you look. And the better you look, the more likely you are for people to, more likely it is that people will say that you won the debate. And it's just like back in the 60s when, you know, JFK debated Richard Nixon, and it was on TV, and JFK looked great, and he had a suit on and all this stuff, and Nixon was all sweaty, and he didn't have any makeup on. And people said that JFK won that debate when they watched it on TV. But then the people who listened to the debate on the radio said that Richard Nixon won the debate. And it's because Richard Nixon looked like shit and had a 5 o'clock shadow and all that. But you didn't see that shit if you were listening to it on the radio. And that's exactly what debates are all about. This is why Donald Trump, during the debates, the first debate, and during his debates with Hillary Clinton, continuously interrupts. This is why he continuously interrupts, he belittles them, he calls people names. You know, during the Republican presidential debates, you know, he's like calling like Marco Rubio Little Marco and all that shit, right? All that stuff, because it makes him look strong to a certain type of person, right? And that's what it's all about. And if you look at the actual, you know, subject matter, if you listen to what Donald Trump actually says, he doesn't say anything, right? And this is why I think, you know, Joe Biden came off much better, even though by all accounts, by all the snap polls, etc., Joe Biden won the first debate as well. But in the second debate, it's like he pretty much dominated. because Donald Trump was not allowed to pull his usual shenanigans on him, right? They basically, by cutting that mic, they took away Donald Trump's biggest weapon. His biggest weapon is basically bullying people, right? You know, interrupting them, stuff like that, right? Because, you know, when you try to keep it to the actual substance, when you try to say, okay, tell us about XYZ, right? Versus just interrupting what the other guy's saying and talking over him in some kind of bullshit power thing in order to make him look weak. When Donald Trump is actually forced to talk about policy and subjects, he can't do it. He flusters and he bullshits and stalls and never actually, you'll notice that he never actually says anything of substance, ever. Like, and especially during a debate, he never says anything of substance, you know, and that's why basically I don't really watch them. I don't watch debates because it's all about the performance. It's not about the actual, you know, policies. It's not about what the candidates know. It's not about what they believe. It's not about how well they, you know, the knowledge that they have, right? It's all about who looks better, right? Who looks better? Who can pull off, you know, who looks stronger, right? Who can exert more confidence, this and that, you know, that kind of thing. And so that whatever, you know, candidate, like, can present themselves in a better way. That's what it's all about, you know. I get some requests sometimes, especially from libertarians for debates, because I made a couple of anti-libertarian videos, you know, like I made a video called People Who Piss Me Off, Libertarians, right? And occasionally I'll get a couple of people who say, you know, I got a guy that would like to debate you, and I haven't done it yet, you know, because I'm not a good performer. And that's why, right? Because that's the reason, you know, because they're not, whoever it is would not be listening to what I'm actually saying as far as any, you know, political theory or whatever, right? Or the substance of XYZ. They're not going to listen to any of that shit. What they're really, you know, what really sways people in a debate is, you know, the tactics that you use. How do you come off? Do you come off like you're intelligent? Do you come off like you're confident, like you know what you're doing, like you're strong, right? These are the things that people identify with. They say the person that looks stronger is the one that wins, you know. The person that performs better, the person that speaks faster, that has more confidence in what they say. Shit like that. Those are the guys that win debates. And frankly, it's bullshit. It's bullshit because you don't actually get anything of substance. You know, one time, years and years ago, I think when I was like 19 maybe 20, 21, right around there, right? This would be like late 90s, right? I went to a debate at a local community center where a guy, evangelical preacher and a scientist were debating evolution. Right. And it was pretty unanimous that the preacher won the debate. Right. Because he was an orator. Right. He knew how to talk to people. He knew how to address large crowds, because that's what this guy did for a living, was basically address large crowds, because he's a preacher. Right. Every Sunday he's out there giving a sermon. He knows how to talk to people. The scientist guy didn't know how to fucking talk to people. He had no clue how to talk to people. He knew the facts. He knew the science. He could tell you things about transitional forms and shit like that. Right? That kind of thing. But when it came to actually addressing, you know, how to talk to a crowd of people, how to work the room, shit like that, he had no clue. Right? And he came off. Sorry, folks. Had to get rid of the pencil shavings. he came off as a bookwormy, you know, academic type, and he was boring to listen to. Right? And that turns people off. And lo and behold, afterwards, you know, it was pretty fucking obvious who held the room, even though 100% of what the preacher guy was saying was ridiculous creationist bullshit. Right? And that's kind of, you know, what happens at debates, and that's why I don't give a shit about them. That's why I don't watch them. I'll watch the highlights afterwards, just to see if anybody said anything really stupid, you know, or if anybody had any really good lines. But that's the kind of thing even you'll get from people who comment on debates afterwards. They'll say, oh, Biden had a really good line here. You know, like apparently there was a thing where like Donald Trump was saying like, you know, immigrants had low IQs or whatever. And then like, you know, Biden had this response saying, see, it's just like he said when he started, you know, because when Donald Trump first started his campaign back in 2015, that was how he started with the whole, you know, they're rapists and they're murderers things, right? They're rapists, they're murderers, and some I assume are good people. That's how he started. Or another one was, he said, yeah, we're learning to live with the pandemic, and then apparently Biden came out and said, oh, people are learning to die with the pandemic. That's another good line. And it's like, yeah, those are good lines, right? But it's like, a real debate shouldn't be about good lines, you know? And it shouldn't be about who looks better. It should be about who fucking knows more, right? Which candidate is actually giving out, you know, better who's actually has better policy, you know, proposals and decisions, and whose record is better. That's what it should really be about. And even like, you know, the liberal guys, when they like comment on this, that's how they comment on it. Yeah, Trump looked really good here. Biden had a great line there. And it's like, yeah, that's not the fucking substance of a goddamn debate. You know, it's like, what did they propose? What were their fucking like policy proposals? Right? Did Donald Trump outline a healthcare plan, for example? No. Did Joe Biden outline a healthcare plan? Did he give us any specifics? You know, did their plans that those guys, you know, did they give, if they did give specifics to their plans, let's compare the plans to each other. Let's not compare how each fucking candidate looked or if they had a good line. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's vapid bullshit. And that's why I don't like them. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I just don't really get, you know, because apparently these debates actually do make a difference, and they do sway people, and you see the polls go up or down depending afterwards on the debates, and I just don't understand that shit. I don't see how, you know, at this point, 2 weeks away, how anybody couldn't have made a fucking decision yet. Right? Seriously. It's like, you've had 4 years to come to this decision, folks. You should know it by now. You know, you should know it. If you pay attention at all to politics, you should know what at least Donald Trump is all about. You probably should know what Joe Biden's all about. I mean, he was vice president for fucking 8 years anyway. Right? It's like, I mean, he's been in politics for, you know, what, 25, 30, 40 years now, right? So you should know what he's about by now too. It's like, you know, you should know what he supports and what he doesn't support, etc., etc., etc. It's like, how can the fuck can you not be decided at this point? I don't get it. Like, you know, turn off fucking Survivor or the, you know, whatever the fuck it is you're watching. I don't know. Is Survivor even on the air anymore? Right? Seriously, like, turn off whatever dumbass TV show it is you're watching and pay attention to fucking what's going on around you for a little bit. Seriously, folks, fuck. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, you can see that I keep up with what's on TV. I'm talking about TV shows from fucking like 15 years ago. I don't know. I have been watching The Great British Baking Show. That's awesome. If you haven't seen that show, it's on Netflix. And it's like, It's like the same sort of baking shows that you get in America, except it seems to be 25 times harder, and they really make these people do some crazy shit, and I feel bad for them. Let's see, how we looking? I think around her eyes, it's I wanted to make it look a little more realistic, like give her some actual real skin tones here. Oh, that's actually purple. See, that looks brown to me. Doesn't that look brown? This is actually purple. And I think I fucked it up a little bit because I'm looking at her foot here, and her foot, it's like fucking purple. I'm like, god damn it. I'm going to have to paint over that. I just fucked up her foot. That's okay. That's what paint is all about here, folks. So let's see. Do I have any sort of flesh tony kind of thing that I can cover that up with on her foot there? Because that looks horrible. I wanted her foot to look dirty, you know, because she's been out in the wilderness and shit. So let's see if we can't just make her foot look a little more grungy and cover that up just a little bit. You know, that is the downside to traditional media, is that there's no undo button. But the plus side is that you can just cover things up and blend them in there. I'll have to add some highlights to the top of that in order to sort of blend that in a little better. But yeah, you can just blend colors in, and then hopefully no one will notice that. So let's see. I think we're looking pretty good here, wouldn't you say? You know, it's coming along, right? Let's see. So we got some comments. Let's look at some comments here. Let me get some water here first. Okay, because we're about at 2 hours, so I'm getting ready to wind this down. All right. Dynacat loves me. I already voted with no hiccups. Not a state about which there is any doubt, though. Thoroughly Democratic Party. Yeah, I voted too. I'm very happy to say. It was easy, you know. I just went down to my local city hall in my town here, and they had a big ass drop box, and it was a piece of cake. And I encourage everybody out there, if you haven't voted yet, to go do it. You know, the more that you can avoid the craziness, which will most likely happen on election day, the better. Right? Because, yeah, you know, there's no reason to have to wait hours and hours and hours to go vote. And if you can do it early, then go do it early. You know, because let's not forget, you know, we are still living in a pandemic, right? And you can very, very much still get this disease. And as a matter of fact, you know, because a lot of people are kind of acting like it's already gone. No, it's not gone. It's actually spiking right now. You know, we're seeing now the number of infections and starting to see the same number of deaths that we got from earlier in the year when this first started, right? Back in, you know, February, March, right? And April, when it was like during the first big wave and they had to shut down and all that stuff. That's the kind of like numbers we're getting now, which is, you know, a lot of places in the country are considering another locking down again, right? Which is funny because there's a map. I was looking at the map of these increased this outbreak, and it's pretty much every state that it hit early on is not seeing an increase. California, New York, Florida, Louisiana, although we can't really trust the numbers from Florida, but their official numbers is that it's not going up. Louisiana, those places that were big centers of the outbreak to begin with are not seeing a huge spike right now. And it's all those Midwestern places that didn't take the shit seriously, that didn't lock down, places like Wyoming, Kentucky, right? Those sorts of places. Those are the ones that are actually seeing it. And it's sort of like, they laughed when it hit the red coastal states. They laughed at it. And now that it's hitting them, they're not fucking laughing. And it's like, well, maybe if you guys would have took these fucking precautions, right? And I'm directing this to the governors of those states, right? These are the states that you would, these are red states that you would say the people in them would make fun of places like Chicago and California and stuff for being blue state hellholes, right? And now it's like, oh, now they're starting to see the real life, the real life application of conservative policies when it comes to pandemics. They're starting to see that shit, and it's actually kind of fucked up because, this is resulting in thousands of people dying. I think it was something like yesterday, something like 980 people died yesterday around the country. So we're back up to that point. At one point in like April and March, we were seeing 1,000 people a day die in this country, and it went down. As the curve, went over the curve, that number started to decrease, and now it's going back up. And it's going back up specifically because people are not taking this shit seriously. So that's kind of fucked up. Let's see. Let's make her eyes, I guess, blue, right? Yeah, I was always a sucker for blue eyes. Here's our Aryan hobbit here, blonde-haired, blue eyes. Okay, let's see here. Another comment. Dinah Cat loves me. The Republican Party hasn't been conservative since Reagan. Yeah, shit, ain't that the truth? It's radical fascists. The real conservatives are all moving to the Democrats, who shouldn't take them, but of course they do. Yeah, man, that's 100% right there. I could not agree more with that. The Republican Party has been moving far, far right, over the last 3 decades. I think the shit really started when, it really got into gear when Ronald Reagan repealed the Fairness Doctrine. And then that allowed people like Rush Limbaugh to, take advantage of that. Because before the Fairness, before when we did have the Fairness Doctrine, you would have to give both sides of an argument in an editorial. And it wouldn't allow somebody like a pure conservative or liberal commentator to exist. You always had to give both viewpoints, right? And the argument against that was that, well, these are corporations and they have freedom of speech, right? And this is one of the reasons why that whole idea of treating a corporation like a person, this is how that shit backfires. Corporations should not have freedom of speech, as far as I'm concerned. That's bullshit, right? They're not real people. They shouldn't be treated like real people. But we do treat them like real people in our society, and this is one of the reasons. This is one of the reasons why we shouldn't. They should not be able to. A corporation should not have the same freedom of speech rights as an individual, right? And that's the rationalization behind removing the Fairness Doctrine, But anyway, that allowed people, like Rush Limbaugh, that allowed people like Sean Hannity and all those guys. That's why they exist nowadays. And that's why you have an entire network like Fox News who, is essentially just the propaganda arm for the GOP. That kind of thing didn't exist before back in the 70s, for example, right? You didn't have that sort of blatant, editorializing. And because you'd have to have another editorial right next to it to explain the other side, right? So people who watched, or watched the news or read a newspaper or whatever would get both sides of the issue. And now you don't get that anymore, right? And that's led to that, and that really, I think, was a big contributor to polarizing our society like that, right? Because before, however I mean, it's not like people weren't divided before, because they were, they were the same divisions we have today. But the difference was everyone could agree on reality, right? You didn't have guys like One American Network or Alex Jones or, who's this fucking wormy asshole that's actually married to the shit girl? You know what I'm talking about? Liberty Network or some shit like that. You see him on YouTube all around. It's like this little wormy asshole with the glasses that reports on conspiracy theories and shit like that. Anyway, you didn't have guys like that because it was like illegal. And now it's like, and to be honest, you wouldn't also have something like the Young Turks either. That would also not be allowed. Right? They'd have to give the other end of the viewpoint. So it's like, well, but still, I mean, conceivably that's how it should be, Anyway, that's really done a lot to polarize our country, because now you've got like guys like that have just made that have just made a living basically just dividing people. Rush Limbaugh was the first of those, right? The guy's a fucking parasite as far as I'm concerned. Apparently he has terminal lung cancer. Yeah, well, couldn't have happened to a nicer person. I know that's a fucked up thing to say, and a lot of people are going to be pissed at me, especially after this, fat piece of shit kicks the bucket. Yeah, well, you know what? I'm not gonna hold any punches back. He's a piece of fucking garbage. And when he finally shuffles off this mortal coil to go burn in hell for the rest of eternity as Satan's fucking footstool, I'm not going to turn around and say the guy was a nice person, because he wasn't. So fuck him. Right? And I don't care. Fuck that guy. I'm glad that he's dying. I don't know. Alright. Let me rephrase. My grandfather died of cancer. I would never wish cancer on my worst enemy. Right? But I'm not gonna turn around and say that he was a nice person. Because he's not. He's not a nice person. He's an asshole. Right? So anyway, let me just leave it at that. Let's go on. Let's see. We don't have Dinah Cat Loves Me. We don't have debates. We have an onstage dueling press conference. Yep. That's definitely true. Dinah Cat Loves Me. I wouldn't have a problem with voting being mandatory. The Australians do it. Yeah, yes and no. I'm kind of for that, but also kind of against it. You should have the choice not to participate. I don't see anything wrong with that. If you just really, do not believe in voting, whether it's like some people don't. Apparently Jehovah's Witnesses do not, they just don't participate because it's, against their religion or some shit like that, And if you really don't believe in voting, if you really don't want to participate in the electoral process, then don't. I don't really see anything wrong with that. I think, though, that, you should, right? And I think that it helps, it promotes a healthy society for people, too. But I don't know if I'm ready to take that step. of mandating that people vote. You know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna do that, if you mandate that people vote, then there should be an option that says none of the above, right? Because you don't have that option, like on the ballot. I guess you could just put nothing. Like if you allow that, if you say, okay, well, you can turn in a blank ballot that doesn't have anything on it, that's fine. But yeah, forcing people to do it, I don't really know if I can get behind that, but you know, but I would encourage everyone to vote. I even like when it comes to things like they'll have on the ballot, for example. Sorry, trying to get water. You'll have on the ballot, for example, judges, right? Or like judges or people running for the school board. And you're like, who the hell is this? I don't know who this fucking person is, right? Right? Even for that kind of thing, it's like, well, just leave that blank or don't choose them if you really don't know. Or just, vote according to party, even that. But you should still have the choice. You should still have the ability, and you should still weigh in on it. I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you go and it's like, okay, well, Sandra fucking, men, whatever, is running for the school board. I have no fucking clue who this person is, and I have no idea who the person that she's running against is. Well, that's fine. That doesn't mean you have to vote for those people. You could just leave that blank if you want. You don't have to fill it in, But you should vote for the people that, you know about and you care about, like the president. Right? You should be voting for, especially if it's a guy that you don't want who's in office and you want to vote his fat, traitorous, fucking, thieving, conniving ass out, fucking glue sniffing ass the fuck out of office. Right? If you really want to get rid of somebody and you don't vote, if you don't make your voice heard, if you choose not to, then it's your own fucking choice. That's your own problem. You had your chance, you had your chance to actually do something about it and you didn't. And it's like, okay, well, now whose fault is it that, this scumbag fucking con man is still in office? Whose fault is it? It's your fault. Because you had a choice, you had a chance to do something and you didn't do it. Right? So, there's a George Carlin. I don't know if you've ever watched George Carlin. He's got a bit where he goes, I don't believe in voting. I who stayed home on voting on election day had nothing to do with any of it. You can't blame me for any of it, essentially. That's bullshit. I don't go for that. I think if you stayed home on election day, you have no right to fucking complain about anything. If you stay home when you had a chance to do something about it, then you do not get to complain one fucking bit, right? I get to complain because I went out and voted. And even if the shit I voted for didn't pass, I especially get to complain. Right? That's the real fucking way it works. But anyway, let's see what else. In terms of performance, I thought Trump had the edge in both debates. Not many seem to agree. He lied without hesitation and acted like he really knew the facts he was making up on the fly. Yeah, exactly. See, Donald Trump is really good at coming off with confidence, coming off like he knows what he's talking about, sounding like someone who is in command of things, right? You notice there's different tricks that he uses. He always says shit like, nobody knows more about X than me, right? So, I know all about this and that. I'm smart. Nobody knows more about this than me. Like, he always says that shit. Nobody knows more about foreign policy than me. Nobody knows more about medicine than me. Nobody knows more about blah, 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 right? But if you actually listen to his ass, he never says anything of substance. It's all just the way he presents himself to make him look like he's confident when he's not really confident. And I think that's one of the reasons why he didn't, all the snap polls and shit said that he kind of crashed and burned in this last debate because he didn't have the opportunity to grandstand like that. You know, he couldn't interrupt Biden, right? That's his number one weapon, is interrupting somebody, making them look weak, dominating over them. Like, do you remember in the debate that he had with Hillary Clinton, he went so far as to stand up and move behind her and hover behind her like he was some kind of fucking crazy person. Do you remember that shit? And he came off like this weird, creepy fucking like stalking crazy man, right? And that's a power play, is what that is. It's a power play. It's like the same way, like, you ever seen Donald Trump shake hands when he like gets somebody's hand and he pulls them in like this and shakes them, you know, and yanks them around all violently and shit? It's a power play. It's designed to make him intimidate you, to show that what he's basically doing when he shakes someone, telling them, you know, I can buy and sell you. Right. That's what he's trying to do. You know, he's trying to be like, I don't need your ass. I respect your ass so little that I'm going to pull you over to me. I'm not going to even like bother shaking your hand like a regular human being. Right. It's the same kind of shit that he did, like, you know, tried to do to Hillary Clinton during the debates, and that he tried to do to Joe Biden during the first debate. You know, talking over him, right? Calling him names, shit like that, right? Stuff like that. You know, and Joe Biden kind of fought back, and by the end, you know, in the first debate, basically told him to shut the hell up. Right? And then in the second debate, they took that away from him, and that's why he wouldn't, you know, because when he was fucking quarantined, because he caught the fucking virus because he wouldn't wear a goddamn mask, right? When he was quarantined, and they said, okay, we'll do a debate that, you know, but we'll do it over, you know, we'll do it over Zoom or whatever. It'll be a virtual debate. And he pulled out of it. The reason why he did that is because he would not be on stage, and he knows that, you know, this is going to make him look like an idiot, because he wouldn't be able to. His number one weapon is talking over someone and intimidating them, right? And when he can't fucking do that, he has to, like, you know, rely on he has to rely on the actual substance of what he's saying. He knows he doesn't stand a fucking chance, and that's why in this debate, you know, I don't know why he agreed to this. He probably agreed to it because it's like the only chance. And I think he took a gamble and thought that he would look worse if he didn't do it. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that his advisors said to him, hey, if you don't go on this debate, then they're going to turn around and be like, you're too chicken to fucking debate me. Right? I think that's why. So you have to do this debate because it's the last chance. You know, and this is your last chance to pick up some swing voters and shit like that. That's how I think they convinced him to do this last one, where they would shut his mic off, because he wasn't able to do that. He wasn't able to fucking like intimidate and talk over him and that kind of thing. And his performance actually kind of suffered for that, because he had to actually like rely on substance, and that's the one thing that, you know, he can't fucking do, is rely on substance. So let's see. What else we got here? Sean Longer again. I'm still watching TV shows from 30, 40 years ago, so don't worry about it. Oh, well, yeah. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Another one from Sean. I'm from the UK, and lots of people here were acting like it was gone in summer. Now we're in our second wave. Oh, I think you're talking about the pandemic, right? Okay. Now we're in our second wave, having thousands of cases a day, and my city is apparently on the brink of a full lockdown. Yep. I feel for you, man. Same shit is happening here. People didn't take it seriously. And, you know, it's funny because it's mainly in this country, it's mainly the states that didn't take it seriously to begin with when it first hit. Now they're getting hit now. You know, like places like Wyoming and like Tennessee and like, you know, in the Midwest and the Deep South, right? Places that all time are like basically conservative havens that have been telling everybody that, wearing a mask and all that stuff is a liberal fucking Chinese hoax and etc. Now they're actually suffering through it. And they're getting this. So this is the second wave, yeah, right. And deaths and infections are not increasing, and like I said, they're not increasing in California, they're not increasing in New York, they're probably not increasing in Florida, although we really don't know because, as we've discussed elsewhere in previous streams, the information coming out of Florida is not accurate, etc., right? And it's like, well, people, maybe they'll understand now that viruses don't give a crap about your politics. Maybe they'll see now that it's actually hitting their states for real. Maybe they'll notice, like, hey, we still, after 9 months of all of this happening, still do not have an actual plan when it comes to this pandemic, right? In South Korea, they have drive-through testing stations. They have at shopping malls and stuff little iPads that will take your temperature and scan your face to tell you if you're wearing a mask, and then they just don't let you in if you're not, if you have a temperature, if you're not wearing a mask, you just can't go in the door. How come we don't have that here? Every day, like, I go on Reddit, every single day there's cell phone video of one stingy asshole or another somewhere in this country giving a clerk at a store shit over having to wear a mask. Right? Somewhere else, some fucking pissed off Karen or piece of shit, out there is fucking with some guy that's making minimum wage who works at a fucking, like, grocery store or some shit, who is just trying to do his job, doesn't, just trying to fucking make a living because he has to, because we don't have any sufficient, like, we don't have any sufficient government assistance like everywhere else in the goddamn world has, like Europe has, right? Like people in Germany and France and the UK have. We don't have any of that shit here, right? Because our politicians are not taking the fucking shit seriously to begin with, and if you have a problem with that, talk to Mitch McConnell, because he's the one keeping all the goddamn, like, all the stimulus and help going, right? And people have to work in this country now because, the help that they were getting expired, right? And now it's like all the eviction protections, all that shit expired, right? The extra money that you were getting for unemployment, that's gone. So it's like now you have to go back to fucking work. You have to go out and put yourself in danger, right, in order to keep yourself from starving or being thrown out in the goddamn street, So maybe that's also contributing to the reason why people are like, why it's spiking, because people are like having to work in jobs when they shouldn't be putting themselves in front of people, because they have to go back to work. When in real life, if we would just have sufficient, a sufficient COVID response and actual support from the government, and if we were to just really just lock down for 6 weeks, we'd have this shit under control. It'd be gone. If we'd have done that in the beginning, right? If we would have done the smart thing that places like Japan and, South Korea did, and, places in Europe, Germany, right? If we would have done that and, like, nationalized wages, that's what the UK did. The UK nationalized wages, right? It said, like, I think what it was, I think, you could probably correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but I think what it was is that they nationalized 70% of wages and said, like, okay, we'll pay 70% of this worker's paycheck if you just guarantee that they don't get laid off, right? Or something like that, right? If we would have done the same thing in this country and said, we'll do this for 6 weeks, everybody stay home, right? And, you know, it'd be gone. It'd be gone, it'd be under control. We'd have, you know, like in New Zealand, for example. New Zealand had something like 14 cases, like total, for the entire country last month. All right? It's not a concern there. People in New Zealand are free to go back to work, you know, free to go to movies, free to go to conventions, free to eat at restaurants. They don't have to worry about this shit because they took proper steps, got it under control. We're not doing that in this country because we have an entire country filled with entitled assholes, right? Entitled assholes who don't want to fucking take the basic fucking Comic-Con again, right? You know, for you guys that don't know, I am actually a amateur comic book artist. You know, I have a webcomic I self-publish. And for the first time, I got Comic-Con to think that I was actually a professional. I fooled them into thinking I was a professional. And, you know, this is Comic-Con International, the hugest, largest comic convention in the entire country. And that means that I get to go for free for 3 years. And lo and behold, the first year that I actually get to go as a professional, they shut it down because of the goddamn pandemic. And at this rate, it's going to be shut down again next year because conservatives and Republicans and Karens and shit don't want to wear a fucking mask. And it's like, God damn it, I want to go to Comic-Con. I want to go. I mean, do people think that we like having to live like this? You know? Does anybody like having to live like this? Do you like having to like wear a mask everywhere you go and not go outside and stand 6 feet apart from people and not, you know what I mean? No, man. Fuck no. I don't like living like this. I want to go to the goddamn movies. I want to go eat sushi. I want to go to the mall, right? I want to go play Pokemon Go at the mall and get lunch with my friends and go see a stupid fucking Marvel superhero movie, right? This is what I want to do. I want to, because I like doing those things, okay? I like that stuff, all right? I want to go spend my money on stupid bullshit that I don't need, right? Because it's fun, right? It gets the economy going. It keeps people in job. That's what I want. I don't want to stay home all fucking day, you know, and like wear a mask when I go walk my dogs and be afraid and shit. And like, you know, take your fucking life in your hands. If you decide to go eat out at a restaurant, you know, you feel like you're fucking taking your life in your hands. Like, who wants to live like that, man? Right? But I have to. I have to because, you know, I don't want to die. And it's like, I just wish people would take this shit into consideration and understand if we all just did our fucking part, the shit would be over with by now. But they're not going to do their part because they're stingy ass fucking conservatives. That's what it is. Stingy asshole conservatives. And just like everything fucking else in the world, they're fucking this up too. And it's just, I don't know, it's pissing me off. Anyway. That looks a little overexposed. Like, I'm looking at what I'm looking at here, and then I'm looking at the screen. And the screen looks a little overexposed. Let me see if I can adjust the color a little bit. Let's see. Color, set color, clear, custom. No, let's not do that. Let's go to properties. Let's go to configure video. Let's see, saturation a little. No. Contrast. Yeah, it looks a little better. What about this white balance? Let's try to, whoa, okay, that looks like shit. That does not look anywhere close to, yeah, it looks more like that. Well, no, you know what, let's just set that back to auto. That's kind of messed up. Anyway, trying to mess with this, trying to make it look a little closer to what I'm actually seeing in front of me. That's a little too saturated, actually. It looks closer to that. Yeah, that's good enough. Anyway, close enough. This doesn't look exactly, the colors don't look exactly like what I've got here, but it's close enough. Let's see. Any more comments before we end this? It's about 2.5 hours. Let me just read down a little bit. Let's see. Blah 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 blah. Over here, Rupert Murdoch, the bloke who owns Fox News, owns about 3 of our major newspapers, and it's starting up a TV news channel next year. Our newspapers in particular are pretty bad. Yeah. See, I feel for you, man. There used to be laws in the United States, at least, about companies owning too much of the media. And that was actually another thing that the conservatives got rid of, thanks to Ronald Reagan. I don't know what it's like in the UK, but I imagine there was probably similar laws that were close. And, that's another, you bring up a good point. The effect of media consolidation on speech and public discourse, right? And, for example, in the United States, there's one company that owns the majority of radio stations around the country, right? There's a company called Clear Channel, and then there's another one that's like a religious sort of company, and they own pretty much all of the radio stations and a lot of the small TV stations. Like you'll see a lot around the country, like each little city will have its own sort of affiliate TV station, and this one company, it's, God, what the hell are they called? Like, Clear Channel owns a lot of the radio stations, and then there's another one that owns a lot of the TV stations, and they'll do shit like they'll all put out the exact same news stories, the same editorials over and over and over. And there was a documentary on this, I think, that Vice did. I'll have to look this up. It was very interesting. It was very kind of disturbing, the effects of media consolidation under certain companies. And it's something like 6 companies own 90% of the media in the United States, and actually most of the world, really. Like, it's pretty fucking bad. And the way that you can yourself personally sort of deal with this is to try your hardest to diversify your media intake. I always, like, whenever I see an article or something on the news or whatever, I always try to find alternate sources of the same article. And which kind of sucks, because a lot of the times you can't get that. There'll only be, this particular source reported on this story, whatever, right? But it's always a good idea to try to find other sources for a story, try to see what they, especially when it comes to things like politics, stuff like that, try to find alternative viewpoints as much as you can. It's not always possible, but it's a good idea. It's a good idea to get that and to try to get things from a different viewpoint. And then also the benefit of that as well is that you'll start to notice when certain venues would leave out certain details. You know what I mean? Like, you'll say, like, oh, okay, well, this company never reports on this type of whatever. Why is that? And they might be, whatever company it is might be great when it comes to other shit, but when it comes to stories that have to do with this particular subject, maybe I shouldn't listen to them. You know what I mean? Because that's true. It's true that media corporations, by their very nature, have their own biases. Right. And this is all of them. This is not just Fox News. This is also, you know, this is also what you would say liberal news sources as well. They also have their own biases as well. You know, something to be aware of. You know, like for example, the way they talk about, say, stories that have to do with organized labor, for example, right? That might be something to keep your eyes on. How do they address corruption in labor unions, right? An example of how bias on the left might influence the coverage of a story, right? And then you can see how certain outlets, you know, will purposely, like, you know, report on shit specifically because they want to avoid the appearance of bias as well, and that's always great to see. Right? So it's just stuff to keep in mind, you know. And unfortunately, in the way our world is right now, it's not always easy to do this. And it's just, you know, you just got to kind of have to do the best you can. Unfortunately, that's just how the shit is. And, you know, like we all say, it's nothing's perfect. You're never going to get, you know, you're never going to get the perfect society. You're never going to get the perfect balance of, you know, fair, unbiased media, you know. And it's kind of, it's up to you to recognize that bias. And it's also, one thing to keep in mind is that you have biases yourself, right? Depending on whatever political leanings that you yourself personally have, you will also have the same types of biases. I certainly do, right? I'm not, you know, I'm not going to lie to myself and say that I don't. I certainly have biases myself, and I try to be cognizant of that when it comes to reporting, you know, when it comes to different types of, you know, what types of media I believe and consume and whatnot, you know. And that's something you got to be aware of, unfortunately. It's like, people aren't going to do this for you. You have to kind of, you know, you have to be like, vigilant, I guess is the word. You have to be vigilant when it comes to this sort of thing. Anyway, it has been, excuse me, almost 3 hours, so I think we're gonna end this. Plus my eyes hurt. I've been sitting back here, and God, I hope I'm not getting sick. I think I'm just dehydrated. My eyes hurt, man. Oh, Jesus Christ, I need some water. Anyway, this is what we got so far. It's looking pretty good, I'd say. Actually, you know, I still don't like the way these colors look, so let me go back and try one more thing. Let's go to configure my video, and I'm just going to set all of this stuff back to auto. Let's set the, wait, cancel that. Let's try one more thing. Sorry, folks. Give me 1 second. Let me configure my video, and let's see, saturation, auto. Oh, it's not letting me. Come on, saturation, auto. That's bullshit. Alright, let's put that at 100. Saturation 100. Or wait, can I go defaults? Yeah, there we go. Okay, here's the default. This looks a little washed out by default. It is much brighter than this. And I'm not sure how to actually get this to look better. You know, I think I don't know. I'll have to monkey with the camera here to try to get the best picture, you know. But yeah, I mean that's pretty close. It's like this, but it's much, the colors are much darker than what you're actually seeing on the screen right here. This makes it look washed out. But I think it looks okay. You know, it's coming along, I'd say. I think we're actually getting close to being done here. There's just some, you know, some fleshing out I got to do over here, and then on this guy, I got to flesh that out a little bit. And then a couple of little details. There's some leaves and mushrooms and things that I haven't colored in yet. And then I want to do some more shadows and stuff. But I think it's looking pretty good, if I say so myself. You know, I'm actually very proud of myself here because I have not actually drawn anything, um, you know, like this in a very long time. This is like this has been, you know, a learning experience for me because it has, like I've said, literally been a decade since I've painted anything. Right? And so yeah, it's come out not half bad, you know. And I think I should do more stuff in traditional media, right? You know, it's sort of like if you don't, you have a muscle and you don't use it, it just atrophies, that kind of thing. And like my normal traditional media muscles have atrophied a lot here, so. But that's looking all right. You know, not bad at all. Anyway, folks, I think we're gonna end this. I see that we actually still do have a couple of viewers. Thank you guys for staying on with me. Thank you, Sean Lungergan, and thank you, Dinah Cat Loves Me. Um, you guys are great. Thanks for sticking with me for so long. And let me just give my ending spiel here. Let's see. I keep saying that I'm gonna like. I should actually just do it. I've just been lazy. And I haven't recorded any like. But I should just record an ending thing instead of having to actually do this live every single time. But before we leave, I gotta show you all of my social media stuff. Because if I don't, I notice if I don't actually do it, then people don't go to it. So give me 1 second here. There we go. Let me open that up. What the hell is that? How come I cannot get to my ESTY site? ESTY. Come on. There it goes. What the hell is this? Did ESTY like go away or something? ESTY. Etsy. Am I misspelling it? Is that what it is? I don't know. I'm tired and I'm feeling a little funky. Maybe that's got something to do with it. All right. One more thing. I gotta just get one more UCD videos. Okay. So, thank you guys. If you like what I do, please consider checking me out on social media. Let me show you all this stuff. So, if you like my artwork, this is my DeviantArt site. It's at hawanja.com/DeviantArt. And you can see my artwork here. I post comics and stuff here. I have different, you know, pieces of artwork and stuff. You know, here's a thing from Godzilla that I did. Here's another one. This is Godzilla fan art. Here's another one. This one was actually in a book that this guy on Kickstarter was doing for a con, so I got that one published. That was cool. Here's a painting I did in like 2008, way back in the day. So yeah, if you like, you know, if you like my artwork and you want to see more of it, check me out at Hawanja on DeviantArt.com. I'll put the links to this down in the bottom of the stream after it publishes, so you can check out my artwork. And I also have a webcomic. It is at hawanja.com. Fun for the whole stupid family. This is my webcomic. Please forgive the guy doing construction outside at 11 o'clock at night. I don't know why. But this is my webcomic. It's got ninjas and demons and stuff in it. Blah, blah, blah. It's pretty cool. This is my other webcomic, which is Dirty Kitchen Comics. And this is much more of like just random funny stuff. You know. Let's do another one. Here's another example. of my webcomic. Right. I'm a big Godzilla fan, if you haven't noticed. So anyway, that's at hawanja.com. You know, check me out there. This is my Etsy shop. So if you like my work and you want to support the channel and you don't want to do Patreon, I have a Patreon, which is at patreon.com/hawanja. But if you don't want to do a recurring thing at Patreon, please consider buying something. These are prints that I make. Most of these are 11 by 17 prints. This is actually one that we did during the course of a stream, which is this Plague Demon thing. That one came out pretty good, I think. This one's really popular. This is a Lovecraft character. You know, these are prints that I hand stain myself. Here's you know, Cthulhu, right? And you can kind of see what it looks like. And I bake them, and then I use coffee, stuff like that. So each one comes out different, the staining. And then I put the stuff on them that makes them feel like leather. So that's, you know. And these are actually kind of popular. And if you like my channel, if you like my artwork, please consider buying one. And I'll put links to all this in the bottom, like I said. And this is my other YouTube channel. It's UCD Videos. So I mainly do like video game and toy reviews, stuff like that. You know, I do gaming live streams because my UCD Videos website, I have a website called Ultimate Console Database, UCD, which is all about video games. But I've kind of like moved on to like other things. I review movies. I talk about you know, TV shows and stuff like that. So this is all non-political content. So if you want to, you know, get some stuff from me that is not about politics, please check me out on UCD Videos. And that's what I got, folks. So thanks again to everybody that was out there watching. Appreciate it. Thank you, Dynacat Loves Me. Thank you, Sean, and everybody else who was on tonight. And I will probably do another one, most likely on Wednesday or Thursday of next week. So thanks, guys. You're all great. And I really, really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time. Adios.